Ethan leaned back in his chair and stared at the invitation lying on his desk. He had been avoiding it for days, hoping it would somehow disappear. But there it was, crisp and formal, waiting for him to face reality. His ex, the woman who had left him years ago when he was struggling, was getting married. The thought of attending her engagement party made his chest tighten. He hadn't expected to ever feel this kind of nervousness again, not after all he had accomplished since their breakup. His office was quiet, the soft hum of the air conditioner filling the space. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting stripes across the floor. Ethan rubbed his temples. He had spent so many years building his life, proving to himself that he could succeed without anyone's help. He had built a successful investment firm, earned the respect of his peers, and finally felt like he had control over his future. Yet here he was, staring at an envelope that threatened to stir up old wounds. Ethan's mind wandered back to the day she had left. It was a rainy afternoon, and he remembered standing outside their tiny apartment, watching her walk away with her suitcase. She had said she needed more than he could give at the time. He had been broke, struggling to pay rent and juggling multiple jobs just to keep afloat. He had understood her decision, even if it had broken him. But over the years, he had poured himself into work, into numbers and deals, convincing himself that he didn't need anyone else. Now, seeing that invitation, he realized he didn't want to face the party alone. He didn't want to show up empty-handed, to have people whisper about him being single, to let his ex see him vulnerable. Pride and a lingering sense of hurt pushed him toward a decision he never thought he would make. He needed someone by his side, a date, someone who could appear confident, charming, and capable of drawing attention, someone who would make people forget he was alone. The idea made him uneasy. Ethan wasn't used to relying on anyone, especially not for something so personal. He considered calling a friend, someone he trusted, but he knew no one would be willing to step into this delicate situation. He needed someone who could play the part convincingly. He needed someone who could make a statement without stealing the wrong kind of attention. After a few moments of silence, Ethan picked up his phone and started scrolling through his contacts, feeling increasingly frustrated. He didn't want someone too close to his world. Too many shared histories could make the situation awkward. He needed a stranger, someone who could handle high-pressure social situations with ease. That's when a message popped into his inbox from a mutual acquaintance. It was brief but promising. "I know someone who can help," the message read. Ethan's curiosity was piqued. He replied immediately, asking for more details. Within an hour, he had arranged a meeting with Lila, a part-time event planner who had no connections to his world. Ethan was both hopeful and skeptical as he waited at the cafe. He had no idea what to expect. Would she understand the role he needed her to play? Would she be able to navigate a room full of people who had judged him in the past? He scanned the street, watching people pass by, wondering if anyone could truly help him in this moment of personal insecurity. Lila arrived precisely on time, as if she had read his mind. She was calm, confident, and carried herself with a natural elegance. Her presence immediately filled the small cafe, making it feel warmer, livelier. She greeted him with a smile that was both friendly and professional, the kind of smile that made strangers feel at ease instantly. Ethan explained the situation, trying to keep his words measured. He needed a date for one night, someone who could handle social attention gracefully, someone who could make him look good without making herself the center of attention. He emphasized that it was strictly professional and that he expected complete discretion. Lila listened carefully, nodding as he spoke. She asked questions, clarifying details about the party, the people he would encounter, and the kind of image he wanted to project. Her approach was methodical but lighthearted, her tone never judgmental. She made notes in a small notebook as if taking the task seriously but also enjoying the challenge. "I can do this," she said finally, her voice steady. "But I have one condition. I'm not going to pretend to be someone I'm not. I'll help you, but I expect honesty and respect in return. I'm not a prop, and I won't tolerate being treated like one." Ethan was surprised by her confidence. Most people would have immediately agreed to his terms without question. Her insistence on setting boundaries made him respect her instantly. He nodded, acknowledging her condition. Fair enough. I wouldn't have it any other way. Over the next few days, they met several times to rehearse. Lila asked him questions, learning about his mannerisms, his background, and the subtle details that would make their story believable. Ethan found himself opening up more than he expected. He was usually guarded, keeping personal details locked away, but something about her presence made it easy to talk. She didn't pry, didn't judge. She simply listened and offered gentle guidance. Their interactions were filled with small moments of levity. She teased him about his serious nature, making him laugh in a way he hadn't in years. He found himself looking forward to their meetings, not just because of the task at hand, but because she made the process enjoyable. He began to realize that this experience, while initially uncomfortable, was slowly changing the way he viewed himself and his relationships. As the party approached, Ethan noticed the transformation within himself. He was no longer dreading the event as he had at first. Instead, he felt a mixture of anticipation and curiosity. Lila had a way of making him feel capable, of reminding him that he could navigate social situations without fear. More importantly, he realized he wasn't just looking for someone to accompany him. He was beginning to value the kind of connection that Lila brought into his life, even if it was temporary. On the day of the party, Ethan arrived at Lila's apartment to pick her up. She opened the door dressed in a way that was elegant yet understated. Her confidence radiated, and the moment she stepped into the car, Ethan felt a shift in his own demeanor. He no longer felt like he was heading into a potential humiliation. He felt like he had a partner, someone who could face the evening with him, someone who could turn an uncomfortable situation into an opportunity. The drive to the venue was quiet, filled with small exchanges about the evening ahead. Lila asked questions, offered suggestions, and shared observations, all delivered in her calm, grounded way. Ethan found himself genuinely listening, appreciating her insights. He realized that her role wasn't just to be a date. She was helping him navigate a complex social world with grace. When they arrived at the engagement party, Ethan felt a flutter of nerves. The venue was lavish, filled with people who had once played roles in his life, some supportive, some critical. But Lila's presence was grounding. She took his arm with a gentle but confident grip, and suddenly he felt poised, ready to face whatever the night would bring. The moment they stepped into the room, heads turned. Lila's elegance and composure drew attention naturally, and Ethan noticed the subtle shift in the room's energy. People who might have glanced at him briefly now looked twice, impressed, not only by his choice of companion, but also by the way they carried themselves together. Throughout the evening, Lila moved through the room with ease, engaging guests in conversation, laughing at the right moments, and gracefully handling any awkward interactions. Ethan followed her lead, finding that he could relax in ways he hadn't expected. Her presence allowed him to be himself without fear of judgment, and he realized how much he had missed feeling genuinely comfortable around someone else. When his ex approached, Ethan felt a familiar tension rise in his chest, but Lila handled the interaction with subtle skill, introducing herself warmly, engaging with the ex in a polite but confident manner, and gently steering the conversation in a way that diffused any potential awkwardness. Ethan marveled at her ability to manage the room and at the calm assurance she radiated. As the night progressed, Ethan found himself laughing more than he had in years. He enjoyed the small talk, the gentle teasing, the light-hearted conversations that made the evening feel less like a performance and more like a shared experience. Lila's influence was undeniable, and he found himself grateful not just for her help, but for the unexpected sense of companionship she brought into his life. By the time the party began to wind down, Ethan realized that what had started as a simple arrangement, a one-night charade, had become something much more meaningful. Lila had not only helped him navigate a difficult situation, but had also reminded him of the value of genuine connection. As they left the venue, Ethan felt a mixture of relief and reflection. The night had gone better than he could have imagined. He had faced a potentially painful situation with grace, thanks to Lila's support and presence. More importantly, he had discovered that it was possible to connect with someone on a real level, even in the most unlikely circumstances. Driving back to Lila's apartment, Ethan found himself thinking not about the engagement party or the reactions of others, but about her, the way she had moved through the room, the warmth in her smile, the quiet confidence that had steadied him throughout the evening. For the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of hope, a possibility that there could be more than just work and past regrets in his life. As they said goodnight, Ethan thanked her sincerely, feeling a depth of gratitude he hadn't expected. Lila smiled, her eyes reflecting a mixture of amusement and understanding. She had done what she came to do, but in the process she had also changed something in him. Ethan closed the door and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. He realized that life had a way of surprising him, of presenting challenges that led to unexpected opportunities. And for the first time in years, he felt ready to face whatever came next, not alone and not just with pride, but with the possibility of connection, trust, and perhaps even something more. After the engagement party, Ethan could not stop thinking about Lila. It was unusual for him to dwell on anyone besides himself and his work, but there was something different about her. She wasn't just attractive or charming. She had a warmth and presence that seemed to calm the parts of him he usually kept locked away. He found himself replaying moments from the evening in his mind, the way she had smiled at strangers, the ease with which she handled uncomfortable conversations, and the subtle humor that made even tense situations feel lighter. He wanted to reach out to her, not just to thank her again, but to continue the connection they had unexpectedly formed. For days he debated how to contact her without seeming awkward or intrusive. His pride and insecurities warred with his curiosity. Finally, he sent a simple message. "Thank you again for the other night. I couldn't have done it without you. Coffee sometime?" Lila replied within the hour, her response casual but warm. "Coffee sounds good. Let's find a day that works." When they finally met for coffee, Ethan noticed how natural it felt to be around her. There were no pretenses this time, no need to act or impress anyone. They talked about everything and nothing. Her event planning work, his investment firm, little things about their daily routines. Ethan realized how little he had shared with anyone for years, how much of his life he had kept guarded. Lila listened without judgment, asked thoughtful questions, and offered opinions in a way that made him feel heard and understood. As the days turned into weeks, their meetings became more frequent. Sometimes it was coffee, sometimes lunch, occasionally even casual walks around the city. Lila's presence was grounding. She had a way of noticing small things about him, the slight tension in his shoulders when he was stressed, the way he chewed his lip when deep in thought, and responding with light humor or gentle guidance. It was subtle, but it made him feel seen in a way he had not experienced in years. Ethan began to notice changes in himself. He laughed more, slept better, and approached work with a lighter heart. He found himself sharing little details he had never mentioned to anyone before, like his childhood struggles or the moments that had shaped his drive to succeed. Lila never judged. She simply listened and offered support when it was appropriate. One afternoon, Ethan invited Lila to visit his office. It was a rare glimpse into his world, an environment usually reserved for colleagues and clients. Lila walked through the space with quiet curiosity, asking questions about the projects he managed and the challenges he faced. Ethan explained things in simple terms, noticing that she genuinely wanted to understand his work rather than judge or be impressed. She laughed at his dry jokes and occasionally teased him when he got too serious, reminding him to take a step back. Ethan found himself relaxing in her presence, realizing how much he had missed having someone who could balance his intensity with humor and perspective. Despite their growing closeness, Ethan was careful not to rush things. He remembered the fragility of their first encounter, the way he had relied on her for a specific purpose, and he did not want to pressure her into anything. Lila, for her part, maintained boundaries. She enjoyed his company and valued their connection, but she had her own life, responsibilities, and independence. She reminded him subtly but consistently that she was not a permanent fixture in his world unless he earned that trust and space naturally. Their dynamic was slow, organic, and filled with small, meaningful gestures. Ethan began to appreciate the subtlety of human connection, the way a smile could convey understanding, the way silence could feel comfortable rather than awkward, the way shared laughter could build intimacy without words. Lila taught him that connection wasn't about grand gestures or appearances. It was about presence, attention, and authenticity. One evening, Ethan invited Lila to join him at a charity event. It was not the high-profile party of before, but a smaller gathering of colleagues and friends from his professional circle. Lila agreed, curious to see the environment that dominated his life. At the event, she navigated the social space with her usual ease. She introduced herself to colleagues, asked thoughtful questions, and made observations that impressed Ethan quietly. He noticed how people responded to her. There was genuine warmth in her interactions, a confidence that did not intimidate, but rather invited connection. Watching her, Ethan realized that her presence changed the energy around him. She was not a prop or accessory. She was a person whose authenticity enhanced his own experience. As the evening continued, Ethan began to reflect on his own behavior. He had spent so much of his life seeking validation from external sources, measuring his worth by success, wealth, or appearances. Yet in Lila's presence, he felt valued for who he was, not what he had accomplished. It was a revelation, subtle but profound, and he began to wonder why he had not prioritized this kind of human connection earlier. After the event, they walked together under the city lights. The streets were quiet and the night air was cool. They talked about everything, from mundane daily tasks to dreams they had once held but never pursued. Ethan shared memories of his childhood, the struggles he had faced, and the motivations that drove him. Lila shared stories from her life, including the challenges of balancing her career, personal aspirations, and the constant push to maintain independence. In that quiet moment, Ethan realized that their relationship, though not defined by titles or expectations, was becoming something deeper. It was built on trust, shared experiences, and mutual respect. Lila's influence was subtle but transformative. She had taught him that connection was not about control or appearances. It was about presence, authenticity, and support. Over the following weeks, their bond continued to grow. They explored the city together, tried new restaurants, and even attended a few local events just for fun. Lila's lightheartedness balanced Ethan's seriousness, and his grounded perspective helped her navigate challenges in her own life. They became partners in small adventures, learning from each other and growing together without the pressure of formal labels. Ethan noticed that he was changing in ways he hadn't anticipated. He was more patient, more open, and more willing to let go of control. He found himself appreciating moments of vulnerability rather than avoiding them. Lila's presence was a mirror, reflecting aspects of himself he had neglected or suppressed. She showed him that strength was not just about success or achievement, but also about the ability to connect, empathize, and embrace life fully. One weekend, they decided to take a short trip to the countryside. It was a spontaneous decision, but they both felt it would be a refreshing break from their routines. The drive was filled with laughter, music, and conversation. They stopped at small cafes, walked along quiet trails, and watched the sunset over rolling hills. In those moments, Ethan felt a sense of freedom he hadn't experienced in years. It was not about grandeur or spectacle. It was about simplicity, presence, and shared joy. During the trip, they encountered small challenges: a missed turn, a rainy afternoon, and a minor disagreement about directions. But even in those moments, they navigated with patience and humor. Ethan noticed how naturally they complemented each other. Lila's calm adaptability balanced his tendency toward control and perfection, while his careful planning and decisiveness helped her feel secure. Their differences were not obstacles but strengths, creating a dynamic that felt effortless and real. By the time they returned to the city, Ethan realized that what had started as a simple arrangement for one night had evolved into something meaningful. Lila had become an integral part of his life, not through grand gestures or declarations, but through consistent presence, understanding, and authenticity. He began to understand that human connection was not something to be engineered or manipulated. It was something to be nurtured, cherished, and allowed to grow naturally. Ethan's reflections were interrupted one evening when Lila called him unexpectedly. She had found a small hidden art gallery and invited him to join her. He agreed without hesitation, eager to spend time with her and share in the discovery. The gallery was intimate, filled with works by local artists. They wandered through the rooms, discussing the pieces, sharing impressions, and laughing at quirky interpretations. In that quiet, reflective space, Ethan realized how much he had changed. He was no longer the man consumed by pride and past regrets. He was present, open, and genuinely engaged with someone else's world. Lila's influence had taught him the value of slowing down, appreciating small moments, and embracing authenticity. He understood that life was not just about success, wealth, or appearances. It was about connection, experience, and the people who made those experiences meaningful. As the weeks passed, Ethan and Lila continued to deepen their bond. They celebrated small victories, supported each other through challenges, and found joy in the everyday. Ethan learned to trust not just Lila but himself, to embrace vulnerability, to acknowledge his feelings, and to allow himself to be seen. Lila in turn found a partner who respected her independence, valued her perspective, and shared a genuine desire to grow together. Through it all, they maintained a delicate balance between friendship, partnership, and the possibility of something deeper. There was no rush, no pressure, just a shared understanding that their connection was real and meaningful. And in that understanding, they both discovered a sense of fulfillment that neither had expected to find so unexpectedly. Ethan realized that life often presented challenges disguised as opportunities. The engagement party, once a source of anxiety and dread, had led him to someone who changed the way he viewed connection, trust, and love. Lila had not only helped him navigate a difficult situation with grace, but she had also opened his eyes to the possibilities of genuine companionship. By the end of part 2, Ethan understood that relationships were not about perfection or appearances. They were about presence, understanding, and mutual respect. Lila had become more than a companion for a single evening. She had become a catalyst for personal growth, a reminder of the value of authenticity, and a source of joy in his life. The foundation they had built promised that whatever came next, they would face it together, grounded in trust, respect, and the quiet magic of everyday moments shared between two people who truly understood each other. The day of the next big engagement event finally arrived, and Ethan found himself unusually nervous. This wasn't just a party. It was the engagement of his ex, and all the people who had once played roles in his life would be there. Business associates, mutual friends, and some who had quietly questioned his abilities after the breakup would all be attending. But this time he wasn't relying on luck or hope. He had Lila by his side. Lila arrived promptly, dressed in a way that balanced elegance and understated charm. Her presence was immediately grounding, as if she carried a shield of calm confidence that allowed Ethan to focus on being himself. She smiled warmly at him as she entered the car, and he realized he was looking forward to the evening in a way he hadn't expected. The drive to the venue was filled with light conversation. Lila asked about his expectations for the evening, and Ethan explained the dynamics he anticipated. They talked about the people who would be present, the possible awkward moments, and ways to handle them with grace. Lila listened attentively, occasionally offering suggestions with her usual gentle humor. When they arrived at the venue, Ethan felt a wave of tension mixed with anticipation. The space was lavish, filled with soft lighting, floral arrangements, and the subtle hum of conversation. As they walked through the entrance, heads turned. Lila moved with ease, her posture confident but natural. Guests whispered among themselves, impressed by her poise and charm. Ethan noticed the subtle shift in energy. People who had once judged him lightly now regarded him with curiosity and a hint of admiration. From the very beginning, Lila's presence changed the atmosphere. She engaged effortlessly with everyone she met, introducing herself to strangers, making small talk with ease, and responding to questions with warmth and intelligence. Ethan followed her lead, noticing how her confidence allowed him to relax and be more present. The old anxiety that had gripped him at parties like this seemed to fade in her presence. As the night progressed, the couple drew attention naturally. Lila had a way of moving through the room that was graceful without being forced. She laughed genuinely at jokes, offered thoughtful comments during conversations, and even diffused minor tensions with humor. Ethan observed her quietly at first, marveling at how seamlessly she navigated social dynamics. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was simply herself, and that authenticity made people gravitate toward her. When his ex approached, Ethan felt the familiar tension in his chest. He noticed the way her expression changed when she saw Lila standing beside him. There was surprise, a hint of curiosity, and perhaps even a trace of envy. Lila extended her hand with a warm smile, introducing herself confidently. Ethan noticed how naturally she handled the interaction, speaking politely but with subtle assertiveness. She asked questions that encouraged conversation without revealing anything awkward. And she subtly guided Ethan through the exchange without him having to overthink a word. The ex's fiancé also noticed the attention Lila drew. At first there was slight discomfort, but Lila handled it with grace. She didn't compete for attention, didn't make anyone feel threatened, but her charm was undeniable. People were talking about her, admiring the way she carried herself and the effortless way she seemed to connect with everyone. Ethan felt a surge of pride, not in himself but in having someone as remarkable as Lila by his side. Throughout the evening, Lila continued to shine. She engaged with people Ethan had once feared interacting with, navigating delicate conversations with tact and warmth. She asked thoughtful questions, listened intently, and made subtle jokes that drew laughter without ever appearing rehearsed. Ethan noticed how she transformed the way he experienced the party. Instead of feeling anxious or defensive, he was relaxed, enjoying the interactions and even initiating conversations he would have normally avoided. At one point, a group of colleagues began discussing a recent business deal Ethan had been involved in. He felt the familiar stirrings of insecurity as whispers about his past achievements and failures surfaced. But Lila intervened smoothly, asking questions that reframed the conversation and highlighted his current strengths without seeming boastful. Ethan was struck by her ability to protect his image while remaining genuine and natural. He realized that she wasn't just helping him navigate social challenges. She was teaching him something deeper about connection and presence. The confidence she exuded was not about dominance or manipulation. It was about being fully present, listening attentively and responding authentically. Watching her interact with the crowd, Ethan understood that influence and respect came from sincerity, not pretense. As the night went on, more people took notice of them. Guests whispered quietly about how well matched they seemed, how Lila's presence seemed to enhance Ethan's composure, and how they complemented each other without appearing rehearsed or artificial. Ethan felt a mix of amusement and admiration. He was used to controlling his image, managing perceptions carefully, but he realized that with Lila, he didn't have to try. Her presence elevated him without any effort on his part. There were moments of tension as well. Some people subtly tested boundaries, making sly comments or referencing his past in ways that could have been uncomfortable. Lila handled these situations with subtle elegance. She responded politely but firmly, using humor or gentle deflection when necessary. Ethan noticed how these interactions, which would normally have left him flustered, now felt manageable and even trivial. The combination of Lila's social skill, her genuine warmth, and Ethan's growing confidence created a dynamic that drew people in. Guests gravitated toward them, curious to meet the woman who had such a positive influence on him and intrigued by the natural chemistry they shared. Even those who had previously doubted Ethan's abilities seemed to take notice of the subtle changes in him. He was more relaxed, more present, and clearly comfortable in his own skin. During a quiet moment, Ethan and Lila stepped outside onto a balcony overlooking the city. The night air was cool and the city lights sparkled below. Lila leaned on the railing, her expression calm and reflective. Ethan found himself watching her, captivated by the ease with which she seemed to inhabit the world. He realized that he had been so focused on appearances and success for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to simply enjoy the company of another person without pressure or expectation. "Thank you," Ethan said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence. "I don't think I could have done this without you tonight." Lila smiled softly. "You didn't need me to do anything," she replied. "I'm just here to remind you that you can handle more than you think. You've grown a lot and it shows. People notice when someone is genuine." Her words lingered in his mind. He realized that the experience wasn't just about making a good impression on others. It was about recognizing his own growth and valuing the support that others could offer when earned and respected. Lila had become more than a companion for a night. She was a mirror, reflecting back qualities in him he hadn't acknowledged fully before. As they re-entered the party, Ethan noticed how seamlessly Lila adapted to the shifting dynamics of the room. She moved with confidence, listening and responding to conversations, laughing genuinely, and subtly guiding interactions when necessary. Ethan felt a sense of calm he hadn't experienced at a social gathering in years. The tension that usually accompanied such events was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence that came from partnership and trust. Throughout the evening, Ethan realized that Lila's presence had done more than manage social appearances. She had changed the way he experienced himself in the world. He no longer felt the need to control every interaction, to anticipate every reaction, or to guard against judgment. He could simply be present, engage authentically, and trust that he was supported. By the time the party began to wind down, Lila and Ethan had become the subject of quiet admiration. People commented on how well they complemented each other, how natural their interactions were, and how Lila's presence seemed to enhance Ethan's confidence rather than overshadow it. Even his ex, who had approached the evening with a mixture of curiosity and perhaps a hint of competitiveness, seemed unable to hide her surprise at how composed and grounded he appeared. As the night drew to a close, Ethan and Lila walked together toward the exit. The air outside was crisp, carrying the soft sounds of the city at night. Ethan realized that the evening had been transformative, not just in terms of social perception, but in terms of personal growth. Lila had not only helped him navigate a potentially challenging situation, she had also reminded him of the value of connection, presence, and authenticity. Walking side by side, Ethan reflected on how much had changed since their first encounter. What had begun as a simple arrangement, a one-night charade to save face at a party, had grown into a relationship built on mutual respect, trust, and shared experiences. He understood that the connection they shared was rare, not because it was extraordinary or dramatic, but because it was genuine and unforced. In the quiet moments after the party, Ethan felt a sense of gratitude and clarity. Lila had not only helped him manage a difficult social event, she had also shown him a different way of approaching life and relationships. Her influence was subtle but profound, teaching him that strength, confidence, and respect were not about control or appearances. They were about authenticity, presence, and connection. By the end of the night, Ethan knew that this was only the beginning. The experience had opened his eyes to new possibilities, both in how he interacted with others and in how he valued the people in his life. Lila had become more than a companion for a single evening. She had become a partner in growth, a reminder of what it meant to connect deeply and genuinely with another person. As they parted ways, Ethan felt a quiet excitement for the future. He realized that life often presented unexpected opportunities, challenges disguised as moments of growth. The engagement party, once a source of anxiety, had turned into a catalyst for personal reflection and connection. And Lila, who had walked into his life with a simple agreement for one night, had become a guiding presence, shaping his understanding of trust, partnership, and authentic human connection. After the engagement party, life began to settle into a quiet rhythm for Ethan and Lila. Unlike before, there were no obligations or social appearances to navigate, no pretense or performance. Their time together became about simple, meaningful moments. Shared breakfasts, long walks through the city, and afternoons spent exploring small neighborhoods, cafes, and parks. Ethan was learning, slowly but surely, how to appreciate life beyond numbers and schedules, and Lila's presence made everything feel lighter, more vivid. One Saturday morning, Ethan arrived at Lila's apartment to pick her up for a day trip she had suggested. She greeted him with a bright smile, holding 2 cups of coffee. They decided to take the subway to the outskirts of the city, where there was a small botanical garden Lila had discovered months before. The garden was quiet, tucked away behind tall hedges and flowering trees, a place most people overlooked. As they walked through the winding paths, Ethan noticed how Lila paused to take in small details. A butterfly landing on a leaf, the subtle way sunlight filtered through the trees, the faint fragrance of jasmine in the air. She moved slowly, observing, commenting softly, and Ethan found himself slowing down as well. For someone who had spent so many years rushing from one goal to another, it was an unusual but welcome change. They reached a quiet bench near a pond, the water reflecting the sky above in soft ripples. Lila sat down, placing her coffee on the bench beside her. Ethan joined her, and they fell into an easy silence watching the koi fish glide beneath the surface. In those moments, Ethan realized that connection didn't need words. Sitting beside her, listening to the gentle rustle of leaves and distant bird calls, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. "I'm glad we found this place," Ethan said finally, his voice soft. "It feels different from the rest of the city, calm, honest." Lila smiled. "I come here when I need to think," she said. "It's a reminder that life isn't just about moving fast or impressing anyone. Sometimes it's about noticing the little things that make it worth living." Her words struck a chord with Ethan. He had spent so much of his life striving, planning and proving himself that he often overlooked the simple joys around him. Lila's perspective was refreshing, reminding him that happiness didn't come solely from achievement, but from presence, observation, and shared experience. After spending the morning in the garden, they decided to explore a nearby street market. Vendors sold fresh flowers, handmade crafts, and local foods. Lila encouraged Ethan to try things he would usually ignore: spicy street food, a handcrafted necklace, even a small painting from a local artist. He found himself laughing more than he had in years, letting go of the habitual caution and seriousness that had governed much of his life. At one point, Lila picked up a small, hand-carved wooden box.
She turned it over in her hands, admiring the craftsmanship.
"I like things that tell a story," she said. "Even something small can carry meaning if you look closely." Ethan nodded, thinking about how true that was. Not just for objects, but for people. He realized that much of his life had been focused on appearances, results, and surface-level judgments. Lila had taught him that depth, authenticity, and understanding were far more valuable. As the afternoon wore on, they found a small bench near the river. The sun was starting to dip, casting warm light over the water. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling a rare sense of contentment. Lila sat beside him, and for a long time they simply watched the world around them. "You know," Ethan said after a moment, "I never expected to feel this. Normal, relaxed, happy. I mean, I've been successful, but I didn't realize how lonely success could feel until now." Lila turned to him, her expression gentle. "Success without connection is hollow," she said. "You've worked hard and you've achieved a lot, but that doesn't replace having someone who truly understands you." Her words resonated deeply. Ethan realized that he had been chasing achievement while neglecting emotional connection. Lila had not only reminded him of the importance of human relationships, but she had also shown him how to nurture them without losing his independence or self-respect. Over the following weeks, their bond grew stronger. They shared mornings at quiet cafes, afternoons exploring art galleries, and evenings cooking simple meals together. Ethan found joy in small routines, preparing breakfast while Lila read nearby, walking through the park as the city lights began to glow, or simply sitting in silence, enjoying the comfort of each other's presence. One evening, Lila invited Ethan to a small gathering at her apartment, a few friends she had known for years. Ethan was nervous at first. He had never been comfortable in casual social settings outside of work, but Lila's encouragement was gentle and unwavering. She reminded him that this was about connection, not performance. The gathering was intimate, filled with laughter, music, and casual conversation. Lila's friends were warm and welcoming, curious about Ethan but not judgmental. He found himself sharing stories about his life, his career, and even his past in ways he rarely had before. The openness felt strange at first, but also liberating. He realized that he didn't need to impress anyone. He simply needed to be himself. Lila watched him with quiet amusement, noticing the subtle shifts in his demeanor. He laughed more freely, spoke more openly, and seemed genuinely present in the moment. She felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that her influence had helped him rediscover a part of himself that had been buried under years of ambition and guardedness. In the weeks that followed, Ethan and Lila continued to explore life together. They tried new activities, yoga classes, pottery workshops, even a weekend hike in the mountains. Each experience was shared equally. They laughed at mistakes, encouraged each other, and discovered new aspects of themselves. Ethan realized that life could be unpredictable and challenging, but it could also be joyful and fulfilling when shared with someone who truly understood and respected him. During one of their weekend trips, they stumbled upon a quiet lakeside cabin. It wasn't luxurious, but it was peaceful and secluded. They spent the day kayaking, fishing, and cooking over a small fire. That evening, as they sat by the lake, the sky ablaze with sunset colors, Ethan felt a deep sense of gratitude. He realized that Lila had become more than a companion. She was a partner in life, someone who complimented him, challenged him, and made him feel alive in ways he hadn't experienced before. "Do you ever think about the past?" Lila asked softly, breaking the comfortable silence. Ethan thought for a moment. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but it doesn't bother me like it used to. Being here, with you, it makes the past feel like a different life. I don't regret it, but I don't dwell on it. This feels more real." Lila smiled, her hand brushing against his. "That's the beauty of life," she said. "We carry our experiences, but we also get to choose what we focus on, who we share it with, and how we move forward." Their connection deepened not through grand gestures, but through these quiet, reflective moments. Ethan learned to appreciate subtlety, patience, and authenticity. He no longer measured success by external validation alone. He found meaning in shared experiences, mutual respect, and emotional intimacy. Even in small challenges, their relationship grew stronger. When disagreements arose, about directions on a trip, plans for a weekend, or even differing opinions on minor matters, they handled them with calm discussion, compromise, and humor. Ethan realized that partnership wasn't about always agreeing, but about listening, understanding, and valuing the other person's perspective. Lila, in turn, appreciated Ethan's willingness to reflect, adapt, and engage genuinely. One rainy evening, they found themselves sitting by a window, watching raindrops trickle down the glass. Ethan reflected on how much his life had changed since meeting Lila. He had entered her world for a single night, seeking help to navigate a social challenge. Instead, he had discovered a depth of connection, understanding, and growth that went far beyond any plan or expectation. "You've changed a lot since we met," Lila said quietly. Breaking the reflective silence, Ethan nodded. "I think I'm learning what really matters," he admitted. "I've spent so much time chasing success and appearances that I forgot how important human connection is." "You've reminded me of that." Her smile was soft, appreciative. "And you've reminded me that it's possible to trust someone without losing yourself. We've both learned from each other." As the evening wore on, Ethan felt a quiet sense of hope for the future. He realized that life's most meaningful moments often came from unexpected places. Challenges disguised as opportunities, strangers who became companions, and experiences that reshaped perspective. Lila had entered his life under unusual circumstances, but her influence had been transformative. By the end of Part 4, Ethan and Lila had built a foundation of trust, respect, and shared growth. Their bond was no longer defined by a single night or social obligation. It was rooted in genuine understanding, emotional intimacy, and the quiet joy of shared experiences. They had discovered that love and connection weren't about appearances or performance. They were about presence, authenticity, and the willingness to grow together. The weeks following their quiet trips and small adventures were filled with ordinary moments that felt extraordinary, simply because they shared them together. Ethan found himself waking up earlier than usual, not for work, but to grab coffee and meet Lila before her day began. Lila, in turn, looked forward to these small rituals, the slow mornings, the laughter over minor mistakes, the shared silence as they watched the city awaken. Life in its simplicity felt fuller than it ever had for Ethan. One morning, Lila suggested they take a day to volunteer at a local community center. Ethan hesitated at first. He was used to structured, calculated plans, yet there was a quiet sincerity in Lila's voice, a way of presenting the opportunity without judgment that made him want to participate. They spent the day helping organize a small fundraising event, setting up tables, arranging decorations, and speaking with visitors. Lila's calm guidance and easy rapport with the volunteers made Ethan feel less awkward than he anticipated. Throughout the day, Ethan noticed something subtle but important: Lila's ability to make people feel seen and valued. She treated everyone with respect, listened attentively, and responded with genuine curiosity. Ethan realized that her impact on him was mirrored in how she moved through the world. She didn't need recognition or applause. Her influence was quiet but unmistakable. By the time they left the community center, Ethan felt a profound sense of satisfaction. It wasn't just the act of helping others that moved him. but the way he had shared the experience with Lila. He realized that life's most meaningful moments weren't those celebrated in grand gestures or accolades, but the ones where connection, compassion, and presence intersected. A few days later, Ethan received a call from a close colleague inviting him to a high-profile business event. Normally, he would have declined, wary of the formalities and expectations, but this time he felt differently. He asked Lila if she wanted to attend with him. She agreed, intrigued by the idea of seeing another side of his world and curious to observe the dynamics of his professional life firsthand. The event was a sharp contrast to their usual quiet routines. The venue was grand, with chandeliers, polished floors, and crowds of people mingling in elegant attire. Ethan felt a familiar twinge of anxiety, but as soon as Lila entered beside him, her presence calmed him. She moved gracefully, engaging with colleagues and clients with ease, her confidence and charm drawing positive attention without being forced. Ethan noticed how naturally she balanced the formalities of the evening with genuine connection. While others might have been preoccupied with appearances, Lila listened, laughed, and spoke thoughtfully, creating a sense of warmth and authenticity in the room. He realized that he had never experienced professional events this way before, never with someone who made the environment feel human rather than performative. As they navigated the room, a few old acquaintances from the engagement party approached. Ethan braced himself for potential awkwardness, but Lila handled the introduction smoothly, guiding the conversations with tact and poise. She asked questions that allowed Ethan to share his achievements naturally, highlighting his strengths without exaggeration. By the end of the night, several people commented on what a remarkable pair they made. Ethan smiled quietly, realizing how much had changed since their first encounter. After the event, they walked through the city streets, the night air cool and crisp. Ethan reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from a one-night arrangement to navigate an engagement party, to a relationship built on trust, understanding, and shared growth. Lila's influence had transformed his perspective on life, relationships, and personal fulfillment. "You've changed a lot," Lila said softly, her hand brushing against his. Ethan laughed quietly. "I guess I have. You've shown me that life doesn't have to be a constant race or a series of challenges to overcome. It can be lived," she smiled. "And you've learned that connection is just as important as success, that even small moments matter. I think we've both grown in ways we didn't expect." Their bond continued to deepen over the following months. They traveled together, exploring cities, countryside, and quiet villages. Each trip was a balance of adventure and reflection. They hiked through mountains, kayaked on calm rivers, and wandered through local markets. Lila encouraged Ethan to try things he would have avoided before, whether it was tasting unfamiliar foods, joining a local dance class, or simply sitting silently on a hill watching the sunset. Ethan found himself laughing more freely, speaking more openly, and appreciating moments that previously would have seemed insignificant. Lila's presence had shown him that life's richness was not only in accomplishments, but in the shared experiences, small joys and quiet connections that often went unnoticed. One evening, they returned from a weekend trip to a lakeside cabin. Ethan had prepared a simple dinner for the two of them, a modest gesture compared to the grandeur of their usual routines. As they sat by the window, the soft glow of the lights reflecting on the water, Ethan felt a profound sense of peace. "I never imagined life could feel like this," he said quietly. "Not in terms of success, wealth, or recognition, but real life. With someone who understands you, who challenges you, and makes you feel alive." Lila reached for his hand, her grip gentle but firm. "That's what matters, isn't it? Not the noise of the world or the opinions of others, but the people we choose to share our lives with." Ethan nodded, realizing how far he had come since the night he first asked her to be his fake date. That one arrangement, which had seemed temporary and transactional, had grown into a relationship that reshaped his understanding of life, love, and personal fulfillment. As the seasons changed, so did their lives together. Ethan began to incorporate the lessons he had learned from Lila into his work and personal routines. He approached challenges with patience rather than impatience, listened more attentively, and valued collaboration over competition. Lila, in turn, continued to grow alongside him, inspired by his willingness to embrace vulnerability and authenticity.